Still calling your congressman? Waiting on hold? Hoping someone took your message?
Thank you for calling.
There's a better way to do this. The MAHA Legislative Tracker lets you browse every MAHA bill. Pick the ones that matter to you and send a letter to your rep with a single click. Search federal, by state, or by the issues you care about most. Take 60 seconds and make it count. Your voice can make America healthy again at mahaaction.org.
There was a time when the news delivered truth,
It still seems like a dream.
when integrity was paramount,
I cannot contend that I have always been right or wise.
and trusted voices guided a nation.
How do you measure such an astonishing moment?
Today, the headlines are blurred, the signal lost in the noise of corporate agendas and paid narratives.
Vocal anti-vaxxer.
Deranged lies.
It is humiliating.
What happened to the truth? It hasn't disappeared. It's simply moved. The MAHA Report brings you unfiltered, independent journalism covering the issues of the Make America Healthy Again movement. Rediscover the facts and reclaim the truth. Subscribe now at themahareport.com.
Welcome to the MAHA Media Hub, and welcome to the MAHA Revolution. I'm Tony Lyons, president of MAHA Action. I want to start today by talking about the man at the center of all of this, because you're going to read a hit piece about him tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. And it's been going on for 19 years now. And I want you to think about who's writing those hit pieces and why. Bobby Kennedy is the first HHS secretary to come to Washington with a real vision. And it wasn't a vision built on wanting more power, more control, more money, or more fame. It was built on one thing: ending the chronic disease epidemic in this country once and for all. And here's what people forget. 80% of chronic disease is preventable. That's 80%. We can do better than this. We all know we can. We can protect our children. We have to protect our children. Never in our history has the head of HHS had that kind of vision, the kind that put him up against some of the most powerful companies on earth. These are trillion-dollar companies. And those companies never knew what to do with him. They couldn't buy him. They couldn't scare him. And that makes him really, really dangerous. What Bobby Kennedy brought with him was honesty, integrity, and moral courage. The courage of his convictions. And I want you to understand something. If you're in the business of poisoning the American public, those are the most dangerous qualities in the world. They're dangerous to your profit margins. They're dangerous to your future profits. So they did the only thing they had left. They tried to discredit him, vilify him, write hit pieces, organize smear campaigns. And here's the thing. He is dangerous, but he's not dangerous to you or to your family or to any American who just wants their kids to grow up healthy. To all of us, he's the best thing that's happened to public health in a generation. Think about what they actually did to this man. They sued him in state after state to keep him off the ballot. They worked to keep him off the debate stage. They tried to destroy his reputation, hurt his family, and lie about his record. They even refused him Secret Service protection. They did literally everything they could to keep him from the kind of power the American people ultimately handed him. And why did they do this to him? And why did the people then hand him this power anyway? Because during COVID, millions of Americans learned something they just can't unlearn. That blind faith in authority isn't science. It's the road to something much darker, much more sinister. They watched the government and these big corporations shame and punish dissent instead of debating it. They watch the government deplatform people, de-license doctors, defund people, dox people, gaslight anyone who asked a hard question. But as George Orwell said, in a time of deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. And that truth is exactly what led millions of Americans to back Bobby Kennedy and to vote for President Trump, because Trump was brave enough to finally give Bobby Kennedy the opportunity to fight back against the corruption that has poisoned all of us, especially our children. I've published about 15 of Bobby Kennedy's books. I've watched him work 16 hours a day, hunting down researchers and fact checkers all over the world to make sure that every line that he wrote was unimpeachable. And, here's the thing. In all those years, with all the money lined up against him, nobody ever sued us. Nobody ever stood up and said, he got it wrong on this page or that page. The Real Anthony Fauci was definitely the most censored book I've seen in a career of publishing thousands of books. And it was censored not because it was wrong, but because it was true, because it was honest. And that truth was inconvenient to some very powerful interests. Back in February, the New York Times ran a piece with a line that every 100 years produces somebody like RFK Jr. They wrote that diseases don't care what you eat or how you live, that the Faucis of the world did a wonderful job protecting us, and now Bobby's come along to ruin this supposed golden age. But let's look at the actual numbers. We have the tools, the money, the doctors, and the science to be the healthiest country on earth. Instead, we spend 3 times what any other of the 30 industrialized nations spend, and we have the worst health outcomes of any of them. Study after study shows that we are at near the very bottom in every category. That's the great job that they're so proud of, that they've failed their way to the top. That's the status quo they're fighting to protect. Well, I say these people have had their chance, and now it's our time. So I'll say one more thing, and this one's to all the people on our side, to so many of them. These are good people, and there's so many good people in our movement, activists who fought this fight for 20 years or 30 years, and many of them feel that Bobby was supposed to be Superman, come to Washington and fix everything in a day. And I understand that impatience. I feel it too. But no reasonable person could think that $100 billion or $500 billion company would just cave overnight, that corrupt deep state actors would pack up and go home. Nobody on this planet could undo a generation of corruption in a day or in a month or even in a year and a half. So here's what I want everyone to see clearly. That impatience is being used against us. It's a strategy. The same lobbyists, companies, government officials, and writers who presided over the poisoning of the American public have figured out how to co-opt well-meaning people inside our own movement to turn good, solid activists into unwitting co-conspirators for the very interest they so intensely hate. And if that strategy works, you know exactly where it ends. It ends with HHS handed right back to the big pharma and big food companies that ran it as a captured agency for the last generation. So let's be patient with each other and let's look honestly at the incredible progress that we've been making. This was never going to be easy or fast, but we're getting there. Week after week, this administration is delivering real change, real MAHA wins that will make Americans healthier for generations. For decades, Washington measured success by how much money it spent treating sick people. And a lot of powerful interests got rich off that arrangement. We, the MAHA movement, we measure success differently. We measure it by whether we keep people from getting sick in the first place, by prevention, by whether the agencies your taxes pay for are working for you or for somebody else. That's a profound shift, and week after week, the proof keeps piling up. So today we have an incredible lineup that are going to explain some of that progress, and that includes Senator Rand Paul, Miriam Eckenfels, Director of EMR and Wireless Programming at Children's Health Defense, Amelia Gilardi, Cell Tower Injury Victim and Youth Educator, biological dentist Dr. Sean and Dr. Ben Javid, Dr. Lona Cook, a chiropractor and co-founder of Well-Adjusted Students, Inc., Lily Tang Williams, the Republican candidate for Congress for New Hampshire's 2nd Congressional District, and our very own Dr. Eric Berg, also known as the Knowledge Doc. So first up, we have Dr. Daniel Pompa, and he's the founder of the Pompa program and the author of multiple books. He became a leading cellular health expert by going through his own very difficult health journey. And he's now teaching practitioners all around the world about advanced detoxification strategies and helping thousands of Americans get their health back. Welcome to the MAHA Media Hub, Dr. Pompa. Great to have you back on with us.
I love being here, and I love this subject because when you know Bobby, which many of us do, you know his heart. I want to start with a story. I sat across from him at a dinner. This was years ago, and I was blessed to be really right across from him. And I can tell you the conversation, every conversation that we had that particular evening, and this is before he had any aspirations of going political. He was literally at this time just, literally digging for, getting rid of the toxic messes on the planet. Why? Because he cared about health even then, especially the health of children. And that was the topics that we were discussing. We were talking about mercury. We were talking about where it is. We were talking about we talked about dentistry and how silver fillings, amalgams contain 50% mercury. And he was telling me how much of that was ending up in the water supplies. He's the one that cleaned up the Hudson. By the way, the left loved him then. I would argue that as far as, the movement, the green movement goes, that no one has done more than Bobby. But we talked about children. We talked about autism and mercury toxicity because that was my story. And his heart was just completely about that. And then he made a shift. He made a shift from that side to this side and followed Trump. Well, then they hated him, didn't they? Now, all of a sudden, the media hates him. All of a sudden, every piece out there is some type of smear piece. Like Tony just said, you're going to read another one and another one because this is the way that it works. One thing that I've found in my years is that when they hate you, you're doing something right. And that's what we're doing here right at MAHA. I spoke a little bit the other night in DC about the glyphosate, because one of the biggest criticisms right now, I think that MAHA is getting, is around this topic of glyphosate. And there's just a lack of understanding. And I feel I keep finding myself having to explain this situation. The media is presenting it, especially on social media, that MAHA has failed. And they lined with Trump, and they're signing all these executive orders and protecting the glyphosate. And Trump is lining up with big ag and big chemical, and I'm sure they're saying big pharma. But the reality isn't that at all. The reality is that glyphosate, no doubt, is devastating the health of our children, the health of us adults. I believe it's one of the things driving these increases in autoimmune. I know it's driving a lot of the cancer that we're seeing. It's creating a leaky gut, a lot of the gut problems that we're seeing. And I talked about the 2012 study. The first study showed it opens up the blood-brain barrier and allows chemicals like aluminum and mercury to cross even deeper. And it's driving a lot of these conditions related to that. So we know how devastating glyphosate is. And I can understand everyone's passion about getting rid of it because the exposure is so great, especially when we look around in these other countries have basically banned this stuff. But it's a little different here because so many of our crops, corn, soy, you're talking about 98% of it will not grow without glyphosate. So many other crops, fruits, vegetables will not grow without this chemical. If you have a child that you put on, has been on one antibiotic after another, the worst thing someone could do is just take away all the antibiotics right away, because oftentimes, literally, the child could die because the immune system has been decimated. Well, that's the story of our soil. President Trump just signed a few weeks ago, an executive order for regenerative farming. And billions of dollars are going to go into studying the chemicals that we're using. And what are they going to find? They're going to find how damaging they are. Billions of dollars is going into how to make our soils healthy again, with nutrition again, even to the point of let's just match what Europe has done in Italy and France with their soil. I don't think they destroyed it in the beginning. But the point is that how many people even shared that? Everyone listening to my voice right now, we have to put the opposite message out on social media. It is our duty. Katia sent me that and said, could you please share this? And I was like, my gosh, I didn't hear about it. Mainstream media, we didn't hear about this incredible executive order. Because the solution to glyphosate, people have to understand, is fixing the soil. So we signed an order to do just that. If we yanked glyphosate off the market right now, if we ban it, we would have major, major problems. It will and is a national security issue. We have to fix the soil. And the executive order was just signed to do that. But we have to tell people because people don't know. Everyone that I send that to, it's a shocker to them because nobody on social media is sharing it. We need to share it. We need to do videos about it because people aren't understanding the glyphosate issue. So I encourage everyone to do that. And obviously all of the good news, that we are what MAHA's already done, we need to share. And we need to bring clarity to what the other side is doing. And this is the way it works. This is the way it works. But remember this, and I'll end with this. I always remind everyone the battle's spiritual. And we are on the side of good. Therefore, we will always have the resistance that we have. But that makes us know that we're on the side of good. It's the 180-degree principle. If the media is going this direction, turn around and go the opposite direction. Somehow you find the truth there every darn time. So when we read that stuff on the media and on social media, I'm telling you, it should drive you to know that we're on the side of good. And remember the war cry. I'm going to keep giving it to you. Rock Kazakamats. Some of you know what that means. But because the battle's spiritual, we're not here without a war cry. Rock Kazakamats.
Thanks so much, Dr. Pompa. It's such a good point that there are just dramatic wins day after day. And, it's often hard to see them because they don't get covered. But what you do see covered are the issues day after day. And that is so important that the way people look at these problems has changed so dramatically in the last year and a half that millions and millions of people are thinking about glyphosate, are thinking about, seed oils, are thinking about different ways of eating, different choices that they can make in their lives. And they're thinking about who to blame or who's good or who's bad or, whether Bobby is dangerous or whether he's making great progress. But the bottom line is that these issues have come to the forefront. And that's a big victory in and of itself. So thanks again. Next up, we have Dr. Eric Berg, and he's known as the Knowledge Doctor, and he's earned that title by becoming a globally recognized health educator with more than 45 million followers on all platforms. And for about 30 years, he's been helping people understand how their bodies work and, how to take practical steps and use practical strategies to improve their health. And he's been fighting through all the censorship and the propaganda and the deplatforming that's kept so many people down. And he's burst through that and has really gotten to be kind of a folk hero by getting directly to so many people. And, that's like Bobby Kennedy, that makes him really dangerous. So as an incredible thinker, writer, researcher, he's really been able to do something that is so rare and that is so important. So welcome, Dr. Berg. It's great to have you on again.
Thanks. I appreciate it so much, Tony. And as we've been talking for quite some time about this topic of what MAHA really is standing for, I think the big thing that comes up that I want to just kind of ding in is the children, right? We're trying to make children healthy. in all different levels, getting back to lifestyle factors. And I want to just touch on this GLP-1 drug in our kids because people need to know about it, and I think it's in the wrong direction. In 2020, roughly about 8,700 young teens were given a GLP-1 drug. By 2023, that number exploded to 60,000. It's like almost a 600% increase just in 3 years. So during that same window, prescriptions for every other drug in that age group dropped by 3%. So you can see what's happening. A lot of kids are now being prescribed the Wegovy and Ozempic drugs because they're FDA approved for kids. As young as 12, and there's even a trial right now being completed in children as young as 6 years old. So my question is, how much do we really know about this drug? And the answer is not much. We do know it does help them short-term lose weight, but unfortunately, it comes with a package. So the FDA approved for children are based on really 3 small studies that were funded by the manufacturer Novo Nordisk, who sells the drugs. And there was an exercise study that I found that it's not equivalent, but it's pretty significant. And if you combine that with diet, you probably could match the results of Ozempic. For kids, that would be a much better approach, because in those studies, they omitted a very important measurement, and that would be the DEXA scan, which is measuring when you're losing weight. Are you losing fat? Are you losing muscle? Are you losing bone density? They omitted that. In adult trials, 40% of the weight loss was lean body mass, AKA muscle and connective tissue. So children are not just adults trying to lose weight. Children are actively building a skeleton and their muscles and their biochemistry at the same time. They're obviously trying to lose weight. Some of them are trying to lose weight as well. So unfortunately, this whole body composition was omitted, which is just devastating, because to have a child being put on this drug and then end up losing their body composition is just insane. But right now, they have found side effects in ages from 6 to 11. 80% of them experiencing gastrointestinal side effects. 12% suffered serious adverse events. 5 children in another study developed gallstones. The placebo, 0 got gallstones. But in every single one of these trials, guess what? When you stop the drug, the weight comes right back. So why did the American Academy of Pediatrics, the AAP, push these drugs so aggressively in the early part of 2023? Well, there was an investigation revealed that 1/3 of the guidelines authored had undisclosed financial ties to the obesity drug makers. And then the GLP-1 manufacturers paid the AAP between $2 million to $2.6 million in corporate sponsorships. So it comes back down to who's funding these organizations. I mean, what's really wild, this organization has an asset of like $178 million. I'm like, where are they getting all this money? Big pharma, big food. It's totally legal. But my question is, why the heck are we allowing this? Is there one good reason? Pushing drugs on children, but taking money from the companies that sell the exact drugs? There's no good reasons for this. So this is not what MAHA is about. Yes, it loses weight short term, but long term, we don't know all the damage that's going to happen when these kids come off the drug. So if your doctor recommends a GLP-1 for your child, ask them, what are the long-term safety data for developing a child's frame, bone loss, muscle loss? And what is this drug really correcting? And what happens after they come off the drug and the weight comes back? Then what? So this is why MAHA is so important, to support the children's lifestyle factors, more exercise, and better food. Thanks, Tony.
Thanks, Dr. Berg. You know, the problem in so many areas is that the studies are so often, are too often just done by the companies that are going to benefit from the outcome. And that, you know, that is just that is true of so many drugs and of so many things that, so many pesticides, all the things that have been poisoning the American public. It's justified by studies, by the literature. And that's what people look at. And it's mostly done by the companies themselves. So that's just something that has to be changed. And anytime millions and millions of people all around the country see something as a cure-all or see something as an easy way out, there's a problem, and they should question that, and they should go to their doctors, and they should push their doctors to really question that. Because most people don't need a drug. Most people need sunlight, they need exercise, they need better food. And that is always going to be the better choice if it's available. And those side effects really are scary. And, that story really is scary, that so many of the studies just are not looking at the right things and that are provided by the companies that benefit from them. So, thanks for bringing that up, for thinking it through. It's so important that we keep these things in mind and that MAHA push hard to tell the truth and to make sure that we convince the entire country that they can make better decisions and that they shouldn't just trust what they're told.
Exactly. Thanks, Tony.
Next up, we have Miriam Eckenfeld, and she's an international lawyer and public health advocate, and she serves as director of the EMR wireless program at Children's Health Defense. She leads, she's really focused on litigation, policy, advocacy, and all things related to wireless radiation and its health and environmental impacts. So such an important thing. Welcome, Miriam, to our show.
Thank you so much, Tony, for having me. And hi, everyone. I want to first take a couple minutes and talk a little more about what we do at Children's Health Defense, EMR and wireless program. So we essentially look at how big tech and big telecom companies and the liability shields they enjoy impact children's health. And so we look at things like screen time and screen content, screen addictions, but also, as you mentioned, the wireless radiation associated with screen times that really harms our children's health. And so we usually distinguish between voluntary and involuntary exposure to wireless or RF radio frequency radiation. So voluntary exposure would be anything that you can control, right? So it would be your children's screen time, phones, wireless routers at home, or whether you hardwire your computer, etc. And we have a ton of really helpful resources on our website that tells people how to reduce this type of exposure. But we also work really hard on the involuntary exposure coming from fixed wireless infrastructure. So that would be cell towers and 5G small cell installations that are popping up everywhere. And as we move through technology, right, from 4G to 5G to now 6G, these technologies use higher and higher frequency bands. And those frequencies can't travel as far. They can't travel long distance. And so the infrastructure is actually moving closer and closer to the end user. That's why cell towers are being placed in front of homes, schools, on playgrounds, on football fields, even on churches all across the nation. So we now find cell towers in a lot of places where our children spend the majority of their days. And so that leads to high-level 24/7 radiation exposure. And while we have literally tens of thousands of studies showing that this radiation is harmful to human health, particularly for children, leading to symptoms such as headaches, tinnitus, sleeplessness, nausea, difficulties focusing, and that most recently studies have even linked RF exposure to type 2 diabetes in children. So even though we have all of this evidence, right, our government agencies are doing virtually nothing to protect us. And the industry enjoys such a broad liability shield that was conferred by the Telecommunications Act of 1996. And that shield actually goes so far that the health impacts of radiation cannot even be taken into consideration when decisions are made about where cell towers are placed. And, we think that we should all be outraged by this. For most people, this is an abstract issue and remains an abstract issue, unfortunately. And that's even though some studies suggest that up to 30% of the general population suffer symptoms from wireless exposure. But only about 5 to 6% connect the dots, connect their symptoms to radiation exposure, and about 2% are so severely affected that it actually amounts to disability. And so that's why we wanted to introduce Amelia Ghilardi to you to make the issue more tangible, more human. I'd like to hand over to Amelia. She's one of the clients that the EMR and Wireless Program and Children's Health Defense represent. And for her, living next to a cell tower has really been life-altering. So Amelia, why don't you share your story?
Thank you so much, Miriam, and thank you so much for having me on the show today to share my wireless harms story. Like she said, my name is Amelia Ghilardi, and 6 years ago, I was displaced from my home in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, when I became sick from RF exposure from a cell tower when it began transmitting in my residential neighborhood. Before the tower, my sister and I were perfectly healthy kids. The day the tower was fired up, my younger sister came downstairs saying she felt dizzy, buzzy, and headachy, symptoms she had never experienced before. Within weeks of the tower being active, 17 others in our Shacktown neighborhood began experiencing similar symptoms: headaches, dizziness, nausea, tinnitus, AFib, heart palpitations, insomnia, double vision, increased depression, anxiety, and cognitive impairment. I developed migraines so bad that I couldn't concentrate in school, dizziness that had me walking into walls, and nausea that had me sleeping with a vomiting bucket next to my bed each night, if I could sleep at all. Others in the neighborhood had it worse. One developed dementia, others have had heart attacks, 3 developed cancer, which 2 have since died from. Our local Board of Health conducted an extensive investigation, drawing upon reports and science from doctors and subject matter experts, which found injury and causation, and resulted in a legal show cause order for Verizon to come to the table to discuss solutions. Instead, they sued the city and offered to withdraw litigation if our city withdrew theirs. When we went to our pediatrician, she handed my mom the American Academy of Pediatrics physician statement on radiofrequency radiation and said that our symptoms were classic for children living within 1,640 feet from a tower. We were told that the only way to reduce our symptoms was to move away from the source. Our Board of Health deemed our homes uninhabitable due to a nuisance, hazard, and environmental toxin, and yet those in charge of protecting our health and safety were told they were powerless due to federal preemption. This put us in the heartbreaking position of having to choose between our homes and our health. Some neighbors started sleeping in their cars, others were forced to sell their homes at a loss. Some, unable to move, remain sick and suffering under the tower to this day. My family was forced to move from our beautiful childhood home into a 100-year-old deferred maintenance cottage that we called the Dead Rat House due to the infestation of rodents. The cottage had no heating or hot water, but my sister and I would beg to sleep there every night because it was far enough away from the tower that we no longer felt sick. Sadly, our story is not unique. A few years ago, I wrote a story called Amelia's Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Cell Tower Days. And after the story had been published, families started reaching out to us from all over America who, like us, had been harmed by wireless radiation from a tower. To learn that this kind of suffering was so widespread was truly heartbreaking. I was 12 when the tower was turned on. Now, 6 years later, we are still in court, and the financial, emotional, and physical toll that this has taken on us and our neighbors has been devastating. 6 years later, we are still fighting to go home. I don't believe it should be a child's job to advocate for health and safety, but I continue to educate on this topic and to share our story because nobody should have to choose between their homes and their health. And with your help championing this issue, we can make health and safety a priority to prevent the loss and damage that happened in my neighborhood from happening anywhere else. So thank you all so much for listening. Thank you, Miriam, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Amelia, for sharing your story. I mean, I wish I could tell the viewers that your story is unique, but it is not. We at Children's Health Defense hear from people with similar stories on a weekly basis, and we have communities from all across the country reaching out. So it's really heartbreaking. Thank you so much for shedding a light. And if I have one more minute, I'd like to briefly touch upon a new terrible move by the FCC, actually, who is regulating the RF exposure. That I want everyone to know about. So on July 1st, the FCC released a report and order for a slew of changes to their rules, including allowing mobile and portable wireless devices, so phones and base station routers, etc., to transmit at 4 times the power it currently allows, without any health and safety studies and without reassessing how this actually increases the radiation exposure. And of course, without complying with a 2021 court order that requires the FCC to revisit its outdated 30 years old RF exposure limits. And so, given that we have this mountain of evidence proving harm of RF radiation, a 4-fold increase in power, your phone is going to be allowed to emit 4 times more power. That will translate into a significant increase in radiation exposure of the devices that you hold most close to your body and to your children. And therefore, it will increase. It will result in an increase in harm. And it's just an overall bad idea. And so the FCC is actually meeting today to discuss their plan. And we submitted opposition, and we urge them to pause, reassess, and prioritize public health over industry profits and user convenience. And so most importantly, we urge the FCC to immediately comply with the 2021 court order. And so we actually have an action alert that is live on Children's Health Defense website to that extent, so that everyone on this call and everyone in the Make America Healthy Again movement can join us in ensuring that our RF radiation exposure limits are up to date with the current science and as protective as possible. So thank you all. And thank you, Tony.
Thank you so much, Miriam. It seems like you're just really doing great work. Just really grateful for that.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Lily Tang Williams, and she was born in 1964 in Chengdu, China, to working class parents. And she grew up in poverty during Mao Zedong's Cultural Revolution, experiencing food rationing, indoctrination, all forms of oppression. And she came to the United States in 1988 for graduate school, became a U.S. citizen, built a career as a business owner and consultant, and then raised a family. And she's currently running for Congress as a Republican candidate for New Hampshire's 2nd Congressional District. Welcome, Lily Tang Williams. Hey, we can't quite hear you. Still can't hear you.
How is that? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay, good.
Yes, welcome.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, Tony. Finally, we got to see each other. We miss each other by the phone so many times. And if you have not followed me on X, I did post something about Mao's Cultural Revolution, how many millions people murdered and died on my X account with 1.7 million views. And I got to know Bobby is because I went viral last year after my debate. My opponent was Jake Sullivan's wife, and she's incumbent now. And Bobby reached out to me to endorse me, a special endorsement. So I finally got to meet Bobby outside the White House last December. I mean, he's just genuine person. When he was running for president, my daughter, told me she's going to vote for him. That's how I started to follow the MAHA, the medical freedom, of course, started during the pandemic. I was in New Hampshire, and I recognized all the tactics and by our government and by the groups that remind me really Mao's Cultural Revolution. Like government, bureaucrats, and CCP officials become so-called, they represent the science. And since I was little, grew up in government schools, we were actually lining up just like the little ducks. They come to our schools, give us all the vaccines mandated by government. No parental rights existed, and no great permission from parents necessary at all. And of course, you probably saw what happened during the COVID time in Shanghai, brutal, inhuman lockdown for 2 months. My friends who graduated from like Chinese prestigious law schools were locked up in their homes for 2 months without adequate food and without freedom. Some just had a mental breakdown. And the reason I decided to run for Congress 2022, because of my warning to everybody in this country is that, I fear this country I love is becoming the country I left. And our individual rights, liberty, privacy, medical freedom, which is fundamental human freedom, were taken away. And so I said, I'm going to come out just to tell my stories and wake up Americans who even support that, who even don't realize how similar to the communist regime. And I survived. And now you see today, they're even more open and communist now in lots of states. And I'm facing uphill challenge to tell people, those young people, American youth, who don't know the history, who don't know the truth, who don't understand what freedom means. And they worship Mao Zedong, a mass killer who killed millions of people. So I feel I have a unique voice and unique impact to make, not just New Hampshire, for the entire country, for the entire world to see. We are supposed to be a constitutional republic. Our rights, freedom are not subject to government taking away, are not subject to corporate, people who follow the money. They're great to take away. So I'm so glad I found the MAHA family, besides the MAGA family, and we have lots of battles to fight. And I appreciate you, what are you doing? And I hope we keep in touch. I'm on X, social media, Instagram. I'm everywhere to tell my stories and to fight for American dream. Thank you for having me, Tony.
Thanks so much for coming on. That was really great. It was just great to hear you.
Thank you. We'll stay in touch.
Definitely. So Lily Tang stands for limited government, personal liberty, parental rights, the Second Amendment, and, primarily health freedom, such an important part of it. And she's a vocal survivor of communism and warns against the socialist trends of cultural Marxism in this country, and talks and thinks about constitutional rights, free markets, and preserving the American dream that she's really been the beneficiary of. So MAHA Action is just very proud to endorse Lily Tang Williams for Congress because she's such a passionate advocate for the health freedom that all the people on this call really care about, and for the kinds of policies that will prevent the things that happened during COVID. So just very, very happy to back her, and we will be in touch with her, and we'll have her on this show multiple times. Next up, we have Dr. Sean Javid and Dr. Ben Javid. And, for 5 decades, the two of them, 25 years each, they've got 50 years of combined experience in dentistry, dedicated, much of their careers to the principle of biological dentistry and its role in addressing chronic disease. So, almost 20 years ago, they expanded their focus to sleep medicine, recognizing that airway passage obstruction and sleep apnea were critical drivers of systemic and chronic disease. Together, they co-founded Smile Body, which is a center in, really just a cutting edge center in LA that blends holistic dentistry with integrative medicine and cutting edge technologies. Welcome back to the show. Great to have you back.
Thank you for having us. Yeah, thank you, Tony. It's an honor to be with such amazing people that share our vision and our mission to make a difference in our country and abroad with this chronic health issues. As you mentioned, our practice is not just focused on, repairing teeth and so on and so forth. At this point of our career, really our focus is actually helping patients address a lot of times their chronic health issues. And we work with people like Dr. Pampa and other forward-thinking practitioners to actually help patients remove sources of toxicity and further their health journey. Now, today, we wanted to focus on a specific source of toxicity that many people are burdened with and do not know. And this happens very consistently in situations where you've actually had a tooth extraction. And so many times people have had a tooth removed. It's very common. The most common one would be a wisdom tooth extraction. And it's become a rite of passage in healthcare or dental health, where you come a certain age and guess what? It's time to remove your wisdom teeth or other teeth. And we want to get this message out today that you have to be careful about removing teeth. Because historically, what we're taught in dental school is you take a tooth out and the area will heal on its own. And this is what's traditionally it's been done, and bone will fill in and this area becomes normal, healthy bone. Now, with current research and the leading researcher on this topic, three doctors, Professor Gennady in Germany, he is publishing multiple studies right now. And it's so important for people to realize that these areas of extraction are not healing correctly for most people. And these areas of extraction, he calls them covered socket residuum, commonly known also as cavitations, are becoming a chronic area of infection and toxicity in people's jaws, leading to a lot of chronic health issues that we know about. Now, these are hidden, a lot of times not pain associated with these hidden infections. And Sean and I are and some doctors out there are specifically trained in diagnosing these hidden infections and treating them. And many times these are lingering in the mouth, causing health issues from autoimmune disorders and other chronic health issues to eczema or brain fog and other health issues that a lot of times not associated, that most people don't associate with the mouth.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. Again, thank you, Tony, for having us, and thank you for everything you guys are doing for this country. I truly appreciate it. But we're trying to do our part. The topics that Ben is talking about is so critical, and we're reading CT scans throughout the country and trying to find these bony areas that is harvesting parasites, heavy metals, anaerobic bacteria that are making people sick. We actually, when patients flying from all over the country, they come to the center, and internationally, we're prepping their body in the center and opening these areas up. We're culturing it. We're sending it to DNA labs, and it's coming back and what's in there. And we clean these areas out, and we graft it properly from their own blood plasma, bone graft, putting it in there. We put them in the hyperbaric chambers, which I know Gary Brecka's big on, which we are as well, which gives a much better healing. IVs throughout while they're staying with us. And these areas are causing, like Ben was talking about, autoimmune issues, cancers. It's making people really sick that they have no idea it's there. And it's critical to look at these areas on a cone-beam CT scan, and having a proper biological dentist that can recognize these areas, find them, and treat them properly. So, and that's what we're trying to do.
I do want to mention that, not all biological dentists are actually trained in this process. A lot of times biological dentists, our principles are aligned in wanting, natural medicine, integrated medicine, and, treating patients on their health journey as a holistic way. But this is a very specialized, not only diagnostic process, but treating these sites is very, very specialized, but so overlooked. And when I learned about this topic, it was at oncology lectures where the oncology doctors were telling us that, a lot of times people with these chronic health issues, including cancers, very consistently have hidden bony infections, hidden infections around root canals. So if you have had teeth extracted in your mouth ever, you should be evaluated. If you've had treatments like this is an important topic to be checked out.
And people don't realize, as a biological dentist, they don't really realize what we're doing. Basically, we're looking for toxins that are coming from the mouth that's going into the lymphatic system and making people sick. So we're still getting you functional, but we're looking on the chromium CT scan, looking for, like Dr. Pompa was talking, which is an incredible human being, what he's doing with his patients all the time. We collaborate. Mercury fillings, different teeth that are infected that we don't recognize on regular x-rays, sinus infections, and like Ben talked about, these cavitation areas. So these are all combination of things that are coming from the oral cavity that no one's really looking at, and it's making people sick. So we're trying to do our part, to heal people.
Hopefully we've gotten to shed some light on this topic and bring some awareness to this very important topic that's many times overlooked. And we're never, by the way, taught this topic in dental school. This is not a topic in dental school at all. So if you ask your dentist about it, they're going to say, what the hell are you talking about? So,
well, it's just so important for people to recognize that so much starts in the mouth, with toxins in the mouth or with other problems in the mouth. And it's just part of the whole picture. Whether it's diet problems or teeth problems or weight loss drugs that haven't been properly studied or cell tower radiation. We want, and the MAHA movement is really setting itself up as the body that will help people become the CEOs of their own body and become capable of having the tools to make better decisions for their own health, for their family's health, for their children's health. And, clearly the mouth is a big part of it all. The mouth in so many cases is where it all starts. So thanks so much. And people watching should go to Smile Body to, see what you guys are doing and learn more about how they can do a better job for themselves. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you for having me.
Next up, we have Dr. Lana Cook. And she's a practicing chiropractor and the past president of the Chiropractic Society of Wisconsin. She's had a unique opportunity to bring chiropractic care and spinal adjustments into the public school system in her state. And her grassroots project is expanding and providing natural chiropractic care to districts, schools, teachers, and lots and lots of kids. So she's going to tell us about her program and how it started and her vision for change, and how important it is to have better access to this kind of care for all of our children. Welcome, Dr. Lana Cook.
Thank you so much, Tony. Great to be here. Great to be with you guys earlier this week when we were in DC for the Chiro Hub and the MAHA meetup. I think Dr. Vicky said, the chiropractors are the OG MAHA. And I love that. We're very passionate about what you just said there, that being the CEOs of your own healthcare, or being your own best doctor. And that comes from early on learning to listen to your body, to trust your body, and also understanding choices you have that maybe haven't been as mainstream, but certainly are becoming more mainstream through the efforts of MAHA and the things that you're bringing to light. So I'm excited to talk about our program. It is a grassroots program that started about 10 years ago. And I want to start with the story of how it began. I was actually at a chiropractic conference, probably 2013 in New Jersey. It's called New Beginnings, so shout out to New Beginnings. And the speaker on stage, a chiropractor, was sharing a vision and having us all go through this visualization of what our communities would look like when the average person in our community understood health and well-being the way that most of us in natural healthcare understands. Again, listening to your body, knowing you can trust and that your symptoms are communication, and how important your nervous system is, and how important your spine and how it protects that nervous system is at any age, right? And so if the average person knew some of these things, how would that change our community and how we go about our day? And he went to the point of saying, what does school look like in that community? right? How do parents enter their children in school? And instead of forms asking about vaccination records, what if there was, forms or resources pointing people in the direction of holistic care or chiropractic care? And I remember sitting in that visualization thinking, that sounds great. I don't know if that'll ever happen. And the next thing that he said was really the thing that got me. He said, if you can't see it, you are part of the problem, because the drug companies don't have problems thinking this big for our children. So why do we? And that really irritated something in me, where I realized he's right. It doesn't cost us anything to believe that change is possible, to believe that there's better ways, and that more and more people will want to know those better ways. And chiropractic and its philosophy and its approach to health and well-being has transformed my life. And so it really lit something in me that I realized I need to think bigger, and I need to have better conversations. And so from that seminar, I came home and went to my school district. I had relationships there built already, and talked to the superintendent and then the HR department. And what came from those meetings eventually was getting to come in and pack up portable tables and our portable insight scans and bring care on site for the staff. And that was great. And I didn't know if it would grow from there or not. But after a year, actually, one of the administrators came to me and she said, why couldn't we do this with some of the students? We would love to try anything that would help some of our most dysregulated children that are struggling at school for various reasons. And I said, I don't know, you tell me. And she said, well, we bring in other services, so why not chiropractic? So we said, okay, we called our state association executive director, crossed our I's, dotted our T's, and then followed some of their lead with this. And so we sent intake forms home to the parents and did our consultations with the parents, and 20 parents signed up the first group of kids that began with weekly chiropractic care, getting spinal adjustments at school, which really doesn't take very long, so they don't miss a lot of class. And the proof is in the pudding, because not only did the parents want us back, but the special ed teachers and the teachers wanted us to come back. And so it really grew from there. So after our first school, it expanded into second schools, and then my team grew, and my partnership with Dr. Amanda Blonigan, which maybe she'll come on at some point. And we've really now grown in a grassroots way. We're in 16 different schools, and we're now helping other chiropractors establish relationships with their districts, and bringing in some of the research to better understand how chiropractic affects the brain and the nervous system, so that the children, why are we seeing the responses that we're seeing? We believe it's because when the nervous system is in a better state of coherence, your brain and how you're operating is able to, executive functioning goes up, and you're able to respond in a more resilient and adaptable way, which is good at any age, of course, but certainly great for our students. And one last thing I'll say is that as parents knew that this service was available and signed their children up, they were how it expanded from like elementary school into middle school as our kids matriculated in grades. So we're excited. We're excited for more chiropractors to have relationships like this and do grassroots efforts in their communities, providing more holistic options and helping our nation's children learn some of these tenets of good, healthy living.
Thanks so much, Dr. Cook. What you're doing is clearly a blueprint for what, people, doctors, chiropractors ought to do in every single state. And, chiropractic is clearly meant to prevent illness and, not to treat it. And so many kids who are having, problems with their nervous system, with their brains, who then have drugs forced on them, who are then sort of coerced to go on to drugs that can be life-altering, and that can cause so much pain, so much trouble for them for the rest of their lives. And this is an alternative to that. And that should be, pushed in every school, in every state, in the whole country. So it's so great to see you doing that. So great that you're just a leader in that movement. And just a great story for people to copy anywhere that they can.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on. Next up, we have Senator Rand Paul. And, he's from the great state of Kentucky, as all of you know. And he's been just an incredible fighter for free speech, for medical freedom, for real science that serves all of us rather than private companies. And he's been a warrior against this kind of corrupt science that's overtaken every area of health, that we just can't trust the science. So he's a strong backer of the MAHA movement, of our goals and our principles. And he's the author of an incredible book, Deception, the Great COVID Cover-Up. And, one of the things that I'm really hoping, and I really believe it's going to happen, is that Senator Rand Paul is going to finally bring Dr. Fauci to justice. So if anyone can, he can do it for the crimes against humanity that Dr. Fauci has committed so clearly. So thanks for joining us yet again, Senator Paul.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks, everybody, for having me. For years, Americans were told that the COVID lab leak theory was dismissed by the science itself. They say it was settled by this paper, The Proximal Origin of SARS-CoV-2, way back in March of 2020. This paper was cited by everybody. Everybody said that this proved that it had to have come from nature. But my investigation has now shown that the people who peddled that certainty never even believed it themselves. This was extraordinary. Starting with the authors of that paper, newly released Slack messages show that Christian Anderson, a scientist who got an $8 million grant from Anthony Fauci, was privately saying that the odds of a lab origin were at 30%. This is meanwhile while he's written this paper, Proximal Origin, saying there was no chance that it came from the lab. He's privately discussing with others that he's still like, I think it's 30% chance. Eddie Holmes is another author. He said, I'm at 20, maybe 10, but there's still a chance this came from the lab, but he's publicly saying, no way. Christian Anderson told colleagues that the smoking gun that left him not comfortable with his own conclusions, that he was seeing this as a smoking gun. These scientists were publicly ruling out a lab leak, but behind closed doors, they were manipulating the narrative, hoping to stop the evidence building against their public assertions. The same authors were in direct contact with our intelligence community and NIH leadership, Anthony Fauci, throughout the pandemic. Christian Anderson expected to have a handler from within the intel community. Ernie Holmes cited a source in China he called my spy. After the DARPA diffuse proposal leaked, where they were going to create a virus very similar to what COVID was, this plan was to insert what they called a furin cleavage site into a bat coronavirus. The group discussed, hey, we need to stay off email. We need to curate our response, our correspondence. By curate, they mean destroy, delete, get rid of. They didn't want to be discovered by Freedom of Information records. Ernie Holmes promised to chat with the intelligence folk. The authors even said they needed to get something back to Tony's team at NIH. Remember, this is about the time that David Behrens, Tony's assistant, was saying, if you need to contact Tony, you can write it by hand or tell me verbally, and I can take him messages at his house. It was all this secrecy, all this manipulation. What were they hiding? Wasn't a coincidence. I have released records now showing that Dr. Fauci's ties to national security apparatus, they go back to 2003. Bobby Kennedy reported this in his book as well. And Fauci wasn't the only science with a quiet government relations. Records I've obtained now show that the CIA and the Director of National Intelligence reached out to Dr. Ralph Baric, the scientist who was doing these experiments in Wuhan with Dr. Shi. They reached out to him years before the pandemic, way back in 2015. They were discussing coronavirus evolution and natural human adaptation, gain of function, the experiments that made this more contagious. In January of 2020, Baric briefed the Department of National Intelligence's Classified Biological Sciences Expert Group, and he raised the possibility of a lab origin weeks before that theory was then publicly ridiculed. So on the one hand, he's privately briefing the intel people saying, yes, it looks like it could have come from the lab, while he's publicly part of a whole cover-up process of ridiculing this. So I've now asked Department of Justice Inspector General Michael Horowitz to determine whether Daszak or Barrick were ever used or compensated as FBI confidential informants, a question that the public deserves to be answered. The irony of this, think of it. There's Peter Daszak himself, the head of EcoHealth Alliance, the guy that was the bag money. He was bringing the money to China, paying for this research. Documents show that he was coming back across the border from China, and the Customs and Border Patrol flagged him as an extremely high person of interest before his return. They were determined to stop him. They were citing over 15 years of his collaboration with the Wuhan Institute of Virology and his role in funneling NIH money towards gain-of-function research in China. The Border Patrol built a formal action to search him. But 3 days before he landed, the FBI told them to stand down. This was Biden's FBI. This was Christopher Wray. He said, stand down, don't search him. He walked through JFK Airport untouched. On July 29th, next week at 8:30, Anthony Fauci will testify under oath before my committee under subpoena. The hearing matters, but it will only cover one piece of what's laid out here. Americans don't need to wait for a hearing to see it for themselves. You can read all of this and more at my new website, The Reading Room, at paul.senate.gov/reading room. I won't stop until the full truth is out there. Thanks for all of your interest.
Thank you so much. You know, these people have clearly been lying to us. They've been conspiring for decades to mislead us. And, you know, I just know that all the people watching this show and everybody in this country ought to be grateful for the work that you've done to bring this corruption to light, and for never quitting and for never bowing to the pressure, because we know there's incredible pressure. And this pressure just doesn't stop. These are the intelligence agencies. These are really, really powerful people. And, you know, they don't want the truth to come out. And you have really just pushed so hard for so long. And now finally, Fauci is going to have to testify. So really looking forward to next week. And I'm just so grateful for the work you do.
Thank you, Tony.
So thank you for joining us for yet another great MAHA Media Hub, and for tuning in each week. You know, it's many of these stories, they're sort of, you know, they're heart-wrenching stories, and they're stories of people who have suffered, but they're also stories of people who have been fighting back year after year, you know, often thanklessly, often suffering so much censorship, so much deplatforming, doxing, you know, all kinds of pressure, and yet they keep on going, whether it's Rand Paul or whether it's, you know, any of the other people who've come on these shows, and so many thousands of other people who've been fighting so hard and for so long. So I'm just grateful to all those people, and, you know, want to just keep on bringing those stories to light. We will never stop working to bring those stories to light. So let me just shift gears now and just say that, you know, the work that we do, I think, is just so important. And 2 weeks ago, we officially launched the MAHA membership. And it's a way for people who care about the things that we care about to get closer to the movement. And, you know, like I said, these are really tough battles. And even our pitch to raise money to keep on fighting all of these battles and helping other people fight these battles, even that's been attacked. And, you know, so this is going to be just an endless fight. But, you know, we have, you know, hundreds of memberships that we've made available. Some of those now have been sold out, but those range from $60 to $500 per month. And each has its own benefits. Each tier has access to in-person MAHA events, including the MAHA Summit that's coming up on September 29th. And these events are, you know, an opportunity for people who really care about MAHA and are involved in the movement to get together, to network, to talk to each other, to get strength from each other. And this past Monday, we were really excited to welcome something like 300 of our members at our new location in Washington, D.C. And it was just a great event, great speakers. So if you're looking for a way to have a deeper involvement, this is it. And I would really hope and encourage you to go to mahaaction.org/join to see all of the membership options and the benefits, and to find a tier that's right for you. But we just want everybody to join, and we want to build this movement, because there's so many forces lined up to destroy this movement and to preempt this movement and to question it. And while questioning's always good, there's so much important work that's getting done, and we need your help. So following this call, you're going to get an email that has clips from this show, that has calls to action. And so please, read that carefully, look at it, join our, all of the projects and platforms that are connected to MAHA. So thanks again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again next Wednesday at 4 p.m.
America's children are sick, and moms have been betrayed. The time for empty promises, long past. Now is a time for action. MAHA is the most powerful force of collective action in generations. The grassroots power of moms and activists has created an army of health warriors with more reach than all mainstream media combined. Together, we can end the chronic disease epidemic. MAHA's influence is reaching millions. It's reaching Congress. And that energy, these chain reactions, are working.
How about Operation Stork Speed?
Dozens of food companies removing toxic ingredients.
I plan to lead by example.
MAHA is now.
We're talking about how to change the culture.
The American people want America healthy again.
It is a renaissance moment in health in America.
For health, freedom, and the truth. Join us at MAHA Action.